I put this season on, and look, the injuries were clearly a factor. Not having your team together to be able to develop chemistry, and not just the chemistry getting along thing, which they did, but the chemistry of playing together and playing instinctively together, that was a huge factor. But I put this year, I don't look at this year as a Brad Stevens problem. If you need a coach to be giving you a rah-rah speech every game, then as a player, are you really cut out for this if you need that cattle prod each game? If you've got a coach who is putting you in the right positions to succeed, not only for and you know that this works, not only for the team, but for your own individual interests as well. I mean, ball movement, players cutting to open things up for other people eventually benefits you too. As great as Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and all these guys were this year individually, how much better would they be if they were just catching and finishing at the rim instead of having to drive through two people or three people or get up a tough contested shot. So, I look at this as the players having to, give it up and say, okay, I'm going to cut, and I know I'm not going to get the ball, but it's going to create movement in the defense. It's going to benefit us in this possession. So I was, thinking that this was their situation to deal with, the players. Now going forward, I would be willing to guarantee you that whoever the next coach is, this team will get a bump next season because human nature. Players know. I mean, you saw it in Atlanta. Lloyd Pierce was and is a good coach. Nate McMillan was a good coach, when he was let go in his previous stops. Mm-hmm. But they know when a coaching change happens, that if they play well coming out of that the credit will go to the new coach, and whatever happened before, even if it was their fault, will get blamed on the previous guy. So I would expect that the Celtics were going to get, they're going to come out next year. Who knows what the roster will look like, et cetera. But the guys who were here, I'm kind of going off here, but the one other thing I want to get in, and again, I've talked about this a bunch with people. You look at the defensive problems the Celtics had this year, and a lot of it, especially in NBA, is defensive scheme, is, how do we rotate? When do we rotate? When do we bring the double? And that's stuff that's got to happen really in practice through reps, through repetition. You can have a film session, not the same. And this year, limited preseason, almost negligible time to practice during the year. So that was going to be a problem. The proper scheme defensively and getting guys into the right spots was going to be something you had to overcome. Having said that, there is not an excuse for the Celtics not getting into the ball handler more, not being more aggressive on the ball handler, guard your yard, get into the guy so that the opposition starts its offense later in the clock, has less time to get you and scramble, get you running around, and just be tougher that way. And that's not only my opinion. You listen to the players during the year, and they admitted that. Mm-hmm. Came from Evan Fournier when he said after a game, there's I'm paraphrasing. He said, there's a problem when things improve for you dramatically just because you tried harder. Yeah. I mean, if that doesn't say, look, this was a player thing and not a coaching thing, there it is. I mean, and I've, again, said before, it's not necessarily guys being jerks. I'm not ripping on these guys. Literally, it's a case where things will be going poorly for the Celtics in a situation, in a stretch of the game. And players will be like, okay, things are going bad. I'm going to take responsibility. I'm going to make a play here. And that's admirable. It makes things more difficult.
I was always maintaining it was really kind of a roster problem. When it comes to the Celtics struggles this year, I've been pretty adamant about that. I mean, you can definitely throw some on the players too, just because I go back to that one quote of Brad, on the sidelines, audibly yelling on television, just like it's a very loud move, or like I forget the exact quote, but like it's not like Brad wasn't telling guys not to cut or telling guys to hold the ball for too long. But I do think part of this is a roster construction problem. As much as people want to dump on the players a little bit, when Jason Tatum's out there with Grant Williams, Semi Ojeleye, Carson Edwards, name the list, right? It's hard for him to get the kind of spacing that he needs to kind of go to work, or a guy like Jaylen Brown that needs the space that he needs to go to work or to kick it out to an open shooter or have you. But this team does have a roster problem, and what I've come to sort of think is you have Danny stocked this team with young guys under the bench, hoping for some improvement throughout the season, and sometimes that works out. You get Aaron Nesmith, who couldn't play because he didn't know how to play NBA defense and work with the Celtics rotations to start the year. Then by the end of the year, he's shooting 40-50% from three, giving them a ton of energy on both sides of the ball, and emerges as a real player for them. Payne Pritchard from the jump was a really great find, and was a 40% three-point shooter, and was one of the few guys that picked guys up full court. And as you mentioned, Steve, one of the few guys that really got into the chest of the ball handler, whoever his assignment was. So it was fun to watch that. But then at the end of the bench, you have guys that they've struck out on. I'm not willing to give up on Grant Williams yet. There are some days where he looks really great, some days where he has no clue. And they're at the end of the bench, Taco Fall, Tremont Waters, Carson Edwards. It doesn't really help you. Philosophically, from a philosophy standpoint, sometimes you want to put, vets down there because guys that know what they're doing and have been there, done that sort of thing. And I think there might have been a clash, if you will, in terms of what Brad is looking for in terms of, guys to go to at the end of the bench. And I looked at that saying, like, look, this is clearly a team that's very top heavy. And, outside of Evan Fournier, that bench is really, really shallow. Going forward here, do you think that's a major priority for the Celtics? Is it not as a major priority as we think? What is your outlook, Steve, in terms of roster movement? What the Celtics have to prioritize this offseason?
Well, first of all, I'd look at this year in terms of like you said, roster construction. And okay, you've got Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Rob Williams, Marcus Smart, Kemba Walker. That's your starting five. And now, what's coming off your bench after that? Evan Fournier, Aaron Nesmith, Peyton Pritchard, who was very good in terms of his role. Tristan Thompson, who, while not, had an up and down season, is one of those veterans and a banger type of person. So I guess what I'm kind of challenging your basic point, which is, it wasn't bad. I think you really heard about the Romeo Langford situation really hurt you badly, because he was a guy that, while he hadn't played a ton, still had the experience of being around and knowing where he was supposed to be. And you can see that he can do some things while healthy. And defensively, he was one of those kind of guys that Brad was really kind of like, I'm sure, I wasn't there, but I'm sure when Brad heard about like Romeo coming back from the wrist surgery and then getting COVID, I'm sure that Brad's pillow took a pounding. There were probably a couple of tears on it as well. But so you look at that, but talking about the end of the roster, look at you mentioned, Taco. He's a two-way player. Yeah, there's some guys at the end of the roster that, I've seen them enough, and I don't think they should be around necessarily. But you look at the end of any roster. Go around the league, pick up the playoff teams right now and go to the end of their roster and see how many names you haven't even heard of. It's like, whoa, this guy's in the NBA. So there's that too. having said that, I do think there are opportunities that the Celtics have had over the years to pick up a veteran guy, and haven't. And I thought, and it's been like a case here or there. And I'm not sure how much the Celtics, and this is something I don't know, and I'm not sure we're ever going to find the answer to. I know a year before this, last year, I remember talking with Ainge and saying, Jamal Crawford, this is a no-brainer. You need to pick this guy up. He's not only a guy that can come in the game, get hot, and give you a bunch of points, but he's also one of the elite leadership, locker room, helping guys along people that's the game has ever seen. And the response basically was that he wouldn't get enough minutes to make it worthwhile. And we agreed to disagree. And I didn't even get a vote on that.
Do you believe that?
Ridiculous.
You think, all those years, anyway, give me a healthy roster and then fill guys in, you know what I mean? They've had guys, look at, and everything is context, right? How good is a guy? Who's he on the floor? Yeah, it's probably time to move on from Semi Ojeleye. But I will say this, offensively, he was parked in a corner, right? And the idea was he's there to spread the floor. Now, if the ball's moving and he's getting touches and the ball's, then he's involved, he's in rhythm. But when he's standing in the corner waiting and he hasn't touched the ball for 3 possessions, and all of a sudden it gets tossed to him in the corner and he's got room to shoot, the closeout coming to him is slow. Is he in rhythm to shoot? Well, I mean, have you not decreased the odds of that shot going in? Let's go back to last year's team. Gordon Hayward, people were kind of cracking on him because he's making a lot of money and he's not scoring 1 billion points. But if you look at his numbers versus with his usage rate,
mm-hmm.
He was incredible. And not only that, but he was a guy that the ball moved. He was going to make the right play. He was going to keep the ball moving. I've got it in my hands. I'm not going to leave it here. It's going to move. There's a value to it because it takes the attention of the defense. They have to honor that cut. And, you go back to 1 billion years ago, Larry Bird was a better shooter because he had a little extra space to shoot because his guy had to be wary about Kevin McHale in the post. Similarly, Kevin McHale was better in the post because the guy guarding Larry, if they were on the same side of the floor, had to be slow to double down because that's Larry Bird over there. So, I mean, everything, everything in context. I mean, Larry, the Larry Bird Dominique shootout in '88 happens at least in large part, or at least in part, because Kevin McHale had played on a broken foot in the '87 playoffs. And in the days prior to that, he was the guy who guarded Dominique when the Celtics played the Hawks. Parrish guarded Kevin Willis. Larry guarded Tree Rollins, who was basically in the witness protection program as far as getting the ball for the Hawks. So, I mean, that all played into it. I mean, Larry Bird could roam and get steals. Now, if he's got to guard Dominique more, that's different than Kevin McHale, one of the league's better defenders. Here's this, Herman Munster guy with the arms out here. And, so, I mean, I'm giving you like 80,000 word answers to a question.
Well, it's all connected. And that's, it's not just one. And this is the thing that, we had Grandy on months ago, we've, various different points of this season have said it. It's like, what's so frustrating about the 2020-2021 Celtics team is it's not just one thing. It's if you have to really sit back and look at the entire picture.
Hi guys, Cedric Maxwell here. I want to take a minute to tell you about Marigold Medical. I'm used to keeping my body in great shape, but with arthritis, even the most simple everyday tasks became unbearable. As soon as I called Marigold Medical, I knew I was in good hands. No drugs, no surgery, just an experienced team of caring professionals that wanted to get me back to doing the things I love. Make the call to Marigold Medical and get back to pain-free life.